Dave Ramsey and Ramit Sethi want you to stay poor, and they are doing this by creating a scarcity mindset for poor people to just keep you in your box while they make millions off you. Today, we're going to talk, without selling you any bullshit, about kind of the real numbers behind what some of these financial people online like Dave Ramsey and Samit talk to you about versus what they're actually doing and or the real math on these situations so that you can make the right decision for yourself. Recently, I made a video debunking some stuff that Dave Ramsey had wrong about the VA loan and explaining my beliefs on the real way to use it and how some of this can help you build wealth. Boy, did I get trashed in the comments. So I followed it up with a video about Ramit Sethi where I talked about whether to rent or buy and showcased live with like calculators and ChatGPT and Zillow and all this stuff, debunking the statements he was making and showing the real math and how to make this work right now, 2025, in today's age. And so now we're going to do another video where we expound a little bit more about just what those platforms have wrong in order to help you see kind of both sides of the coin. I should say this up front. I like both of these people for certain things. Dave Ramsey is incredible. If you are below zero net worth or credit is bad or bank or like bad financial habits, he creates an incredible foundation. All of his stuff is great. To zero. Once you go from zero to trying to accelerate and or build wealth, I disagree with a lot of what he says and how he does it. Ramit Sethi wrote a great book. I love some of the stuff in his book. And I like a lot of his practices. Again, basic fundamental finances. But again, I dug into his most popular video on YouTube. And if you watch that video, you'll see that a whole lot of what he said about buying a house was wrong. And his foundation for teaching you on this is based on the fact that he chose to live in 3 of the most expensive cities in the country. And he chose to rent because he lived there for short periods of time. And he just doesn't fully understand the home buying thing because he's not done it. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the hypocrisy of the ideology of safe, safe, safe. Both Dave and Ramit talk about being safe, playing it safe, the safe, slow way to financial freedom. So there's this phrase out there, which is, if you get rich slow, you get rich for sure. Or like, I don't want to get rich fast, I want to get rich for sure, right? And that is catchy, but it's also safe. And I'm not saying that safe is bad. Risk aversion keeps you from losing your ass. There is obviously risk involved in the investing side, and there is risk mitigation factors that you need to take and be smart with. That said, Dave Ramsey didn't emergency fund his way to 9-figure net worth. He did so by building and scaling a business, arguably way more risky than debt, which he also did twice before that and lost his ass because he overdid it. So Dave has no problem taking big risks while teaching you to play it safe. Ramit Sethi runs a Netflix show, wrote a book, runs a podcast, influencer, all the YouTube stuff, all these things. That's all betting on yourself. That is effort and risk. He is not the W-2 safe, play it for 40 years, retire at 50, 60 years old guy. Neither of them safely got their way to net worth slowly. They both did it, building businesses, scaling, taking risks, betting on themselves. So just understand the do as I say, not as I do, because while a lot of their stuff has legs, their multi-millionaire, net worths did not come from putting $100 a month into the index fund and reducing their credit card. Those things might have helped, but it's not what skyrocketed their net worth. It was taking risks, betting on themselves, building businesses, educating, doing all the things. They're getting rich, quite frankly, off of teaching you things that they may practice, but it is not the way they got wealthy. It is like the same thing as when a whole life insurance sales rep tells you the Rockefellers had life insurance. That's why you have to get it because the wealthy do it. The Rockefellers didn't get wealthy because they had life insurance. They got life insurance down the road when they were wealthy because that is how you keep your capital. Do you know what Alexander the Great, Genghis Khan, and George Washington had in common? They made history because they took risks. Again, I am not telling you to just go burn the ships, which again, another guy who made history, go on a rampage and try to take over the entire world by force. I'm just saying you can play the safe game your entire life and nobody will remember you in 100 years. You can take a little bit of risk in life and maybe you make it in the history books. People will remember Dave Ramsey, not because he had an emergency fund, because of what he built. I'm not telling you that that's the solution, but I'm just saying the idea of being told to play it safe and just take the slow way to do whatever You can live a comfortable life that way, but like, is that all you want out of life? The problem with avoiding risk entirely is that risk is not necessarily bad. There are some things, some levels of debt, which are acceptable and can help accelerate your path to freedom. I'm not telling you to go finance 100% of a property you can't afford, but I'm telling you to understand both sides of the coin and play the game in the middle somewhere. I'm not going to go super deep into the weeds on all this, but VA loans aren't predatory. Taking out a loan with less than 20% down, if it's the right house, is not terrible. I'm not going to tell someone to go buy a property outside of their means, put zero down, maximize how much they spend every month, and put themselves in a corner where they can't afford anything. But I don't see anything wrong with using a VA loan to put zero down on a house that's within your means, or like a fourplex where you rent 3 units and you live for almost free in that house because you're benefiting from all the landlord stuff. How long does it take you to save 20% down? The average American apparently saves $170 a month. So we'll say you save $500 a month, which is above average. That's $6,000 a year. Let's say you need $60,000 for a down payment. That takes you 10 years. Would take you to a $300,000 house, which is less than the median like average of home prices in the US. So let's say it takes you 15 years to save up your 20% down and your reserve. Would you really be better off renting for 15 years and then going to buy a property? Or would you be better off buying a property that you live in for that entire 15 years and then being halfway through your 30-year mortgage by the time the other person buys? It's so easy to make the math as an apple to apples. If you buy today and you put 20% down, you'll be better off than if you put zero down, especially if nothing goes wrong with the property and you don't need cash reserves and you never have any issues with HVAC or furnaces or roofs or anything, and you never put any money into the property, and therefore putting all your money in as a down payment, whatever. And, the interest you save on that $20,000 is this much versus this much, without showing, well, what if you just put the $20,000 that you'd put, or 20% that you could put as a down payment into an index fund and let it ride? Like, all that math is easy. But then if you don't do the math for the other side, which I would argue makes sense to keep the money in your reserves or whatever, not put the money down, invest it elsewhere, earn a return on it, you'll come out on top. But all that aside, in the last 15 years, the real estate market's been pretty good. So you're saying, man, maybe I should avoid buying a house now and I should wait 15 years so that when I do go to buy a house, it costs twice as much as when I first did, but then I'll omit all the math on the loss I had over that 15 years by renting instead of owning a house that I was paying down and earning equity in as it went up in value, and pretend I made the right decision. Like, the apples to apples conversation is great, but this is an apples to oranges conversation. We are not buying a house the same day with that down payment and emergency fund because it takes you time to save 15 years apparently for that down payment and emergency fund. If you have the money, great. Most of the people they're talking to don't yet. So they're going to just wait. Basically, Dave and Ramit have created an army of renters, which is amazing to me because that means I, as a landlord, am going to benefit from all of you guys not buying a house and continuing to pay rent for me while I pay down my mortgages, earn equity on the appreciation, and benefit from leveraging my finances to create wealth. So 15 years from now, when you're ready to buy that first house, you'll have paid off half of mine by being a tenant. So thank you, Dave. Thank you, Ramit. And again, just to reiterate on the VA loan, they're not higher fees. They're not higher interest rate. They're better in every way than most loans as a primary residence one. And we're not going to get into the scope of that. And I'm not going to try to convince you real estate. Like, if you want to see my real math on whether to rent or buy, go watch the video with Ramit because I get really in the weeds. And I have done both even since being a real estate investor. There is a time and place for each. I just don't like the blanket statement. I will say this though. In almost every situation, if you buy for long-term, you win. This is from ChatGPT. According to data from the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances in 2022, the median net worth of a homeowner is approximately $255,000. Meanwhile, it's about $6,300 for tenants or renters. I will say this, that data is probably skewed a little bit because I would say a lot of homeowners are further along in life in this survey and a lot of renters are earlier in life. So we've got to skew at least some of that, but that's a pretty big disparity to be able to credit or discredit solely for something like that. And this says that it's because of equity growth, appreciation, forced savings, i.e. paying the principal down on your mortgage every month instead of just putting it, paying your tenant, your landlord, and then the tax benefits. But a lot of it really just comes down to the time. You're building wealth in your home while a renter is, saving to buy a home. And that money is most likely not in an index fund, because Dave and Ramit are not teaching you to save all your money for a down payment in an index fund. They're teaching you to save it in a lower interest bearing account. So inflation is not your friend here. And so over time that extrapolates and the homeowner wins. The biggest answer for this whole rent versus buy thing is, how long do you plan to live there? If you plan to live there for a long time, home ownership wins. If you're going to move, like, there's nothing wrong with renting. I rented when I was going to live in California for 2 years. It makes sense for both sides. Again, go watch that video if you want the really nitty gritty, but just understand, again, like, owning wins long term. It does. The argument that, like, oh, the 2008 crash, real estate's risky. All your stock market index fund shit took a crash in 2008 too. Same thing happened. It is what it is. The risk was there for everyone. Not a whole lot of people made it out of that unscathed. And then it came back because we play the long game, not the short time period game where we try to scare you by talking about a 2-day window or 2-year window. We talk about like the 60-year, cycle history of ups and downs and where we are, in which case you win. Yeah, the idea that buying a home or owning real estate is a trap is just scare tactics, right? Yes, there are things that could go wrong, and renting is less of a headache. Again, short-term versus long-term. If you buy a house the right way, you're not buying over your means. Have money in reserve that will cover what we call capital expenditures, or CapEx, which is, we know your HVAC is good for 20 to 25 years. Your roof is good for 20 to 30 years. Your furnace is good for 20 to 25 years. Your dishwasher is probably good for 10 to 15 years. Your fridge is good for 10 to 15 years. If you budget for all that stuff, and I have a tool for that, so if you want it, comment below and I'll drop you the CapEx calculator tool. If you budget for those things, you won't be surprised by them. They won't eat you alive. It's a piece of life. Yeah, you do have to pay for that over renting. But again, we're not talking about paying $2,000 in rent, $2,000 in mortgage, and you never see the benefits of either. We're talking about paying $2,000 in rent and you don't pay the CapEx, paying $2,000 in mortgage, or probably less realistically, but $2,000 in mortgage, and $500 to $1,000 of it goes to your principal. So it's just going into your equity, and the property is going up in value, and you're building your net worth and all this other stuff. So if you have to come out of pocket a little bit for some of these capital expenditure things that are planned issues over time, whatever. And it probably won't bite you in the first 2 to 3 years, because you'll probably get homeowners insurance. And if you have like a crazy unexpected thing come up, you have insurance. So as long as you don't lapse on your insurance, they'll cover it. And insurance is a whole shit show anyway, but it's still there to cover your ass. And I know there's all these horror stories online, but in my experience, it has. Look, the bottom line is this. You have to run the numbers for your situation. You need to sit down and say, where do I want to be in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? What's my vision? What are my goals? How is my risk tolerance? Do I have like a massive nest egg, a great job, VA disability guaranteed coming in for the rest of my life, and all these things taking care of me so I can take huge risks with potentially huge reward, but also could wipe me out? Okay, then maybe you play more risky. Or if you're like, dude, I just got divorced, my credit's shit, I filed for bankruptcy, all these other things are working against me, I have nothing going for me, I really have to make sure I don't get destroyed and end up homeless. Don't play it so risky. As Nassim Taleb says, never take the risk of ruin. Do not take risks that you cannot afford. Do not take risks that will put you on your ass. But also, don't play it so safe that the history books forget you, you make no impact, no difference, and leave nothing for your kids, or worse, they have to take care of you. So there is a middle ground. That is the ground that I teach service members and vets to play in for how to achieve financial freedom. You don't go out of your means, you make some sacrifices, you play the long game, you play it smart, and you win eventually. This is a combination of the, ooh, get rich quick, scary crowd, and the, ooh, get rich quick for sure, but like, maybe by the time you're about to fucking die and you never get to enjoy it crowd, right in the fucking middle, which is, I'm almost 35, I get to do whatever the hell I want all the time, I work on what I want, when I want, where I want, my life is great, surround myself with great people, life is good, just bought a hot tub, didn't worry about it at all financially, things are good because I play the middle ground, which is a higher return with a little bit more risk and avoiding ruin. That's the middle ground that you should play in. Don't fall into either of these extremes. Just like politics, being somewhere in the middle is always better than either extreme. That is how life works. So when Dave Ramit say, this is the only way, but they're not doing it, or if they are, it's not how they got rich, that should raise some red flags for you. Dave Ramit's commenters are going to come in here and trash me about how everything could go wrong, the sky could fall, you could lose your ass, and I'm going to laugh at them and say, great, do you want to come visit? Oh, sorry, you can't afford to? That sucks. I'm going to go wherever I decide to go next week, and I'm going to live my life just fine. And that's okay. You live your life, be comfortable and safe and whatever, and I'll live my life and be just as comfortable and a little bit less safe and way more fulfilled. So do whatever you want. Choose your own game within the risk spectrum and the finance spectrum, and make sure you're playing to win and you're playing the long game. Please subscribe if you got something out of this, or share it with a friend, and have a great fucking day.